Hello students, welcome back to your bio class. So today we are discussing about the chapter 7 under plant physiology, which is chemical coordination in plants. Okay. Now what does chemical coordination in plants deals with is the stimulus and the response system of the plants. Now stimulus is any touch on the body and or any action on the body, and response is the answer to it, right, for any case. So in plants, this response to any stimulus is controlled by hormones, right? And what are hormones? Hormones are the chemical messengers that regulates the coordination function of the stimulus response system. Okay. Now hormones of the plants is specifically known as the phytohormones. Okay. Now phytohormones are of 5 types. Okay. Now those are the auxins, the gibberellins, the cytokinins, the ethylene, and the abscisic acid. Okay. Now auxins. What are auxins? First of all, let us know where are they found. Now auxins are found in the apex of the root and shoot. Why? Because mainly they promote growth by cell elongation. Now cell elongation means the stretching of the cell walls, which ultimately leads to growth. Okay. Now the most important auxin is IAA, which stands for indole 3 acetic acid. Okay. Now what are the other functions of auxins? The other functions of auxins are that it delay leaf senescence. Now what is leaf senescence? Leaf senescence is the aging of leaves, right? So what auxin does is delay leaf senescence, thus protecting the plant for longer period of time. Next, what it does is help in the growth of apical buds. Okay, but it inhibits lateral buds. Now this thing about the growth of apical buds and the inhibition of the lateral bud is known as the apical dominance. Thus auxins help in the apical dominance. Okay, that is the growth of the apical buds on the twigs of the plants, right? Now next, what it does is that it induces rooting, right? What is rooting here? Rooting here means that if a cut part of a plant or a stem is planted in the ground and with proper products are supplied to it and proper environment is created around it, then the root starts to grow from the end part of the plant which is planted in the ground, right? Now auxins helps in promoting that rooting. Next, what it does is it helps in parthenocarpy. Now what is parthenocarpy? Parthenocarpy is the ripening of the fruits without actual fertilization. Now we all know that without fertilization fruits cannot ripe, right? But in parthenocarpy, an artificial situation is created where the fruit may ripen even without the fertilization, right? Okay. Now next comes the gibberellins. Okay. Now what are the gibberellins? Gibberellins are of many types like GA1, GA2, GA3, etc. But GA3 is the most important and the research gibberellin out of all of them because it is the most abundant in nature. Okay. Now what it does is that it helps in growth of the internodes also by cell elongation. Next, it helps in the growth of fruits and it is done by parthenocarpy again, that is with the ripening of the fruits without the fertilization. Now these type of fruits, remember, are known as parthenocarpic fruits. Okay. Next, Gibberellins also help in delaying the leaf senescence. Okay. Next, gibberellins are widely used in horticulture and the food industry. First of all, it is used in ripening fruit faster. Next, it is used in the malting process by the brewing industry. Okay, it is also used to produce larger grapes because it helps in cell elongation. Thus, spraying gibberellins on the grape plants will produce larger grapefruits. Okay, very good. Next comes the cytokinins. Okay, now cytokinins is a bit different from the auxins and the gibberellins in case of their function. Now, cytokinins also help in plant growth. Okay, but what it does not help in plant growth by cell elongation. Rather, it helps in the plant growth by cell division. That is the natural process of the growth, right? Okay. So remember this point, which it is very important in case of any if someone asks you the difference of gibberellin and auxins from cytokinins, then this is the most important point. Okay. Now there comes cytokinins helps in the expansion of the cotyledons. That is equal to the growth only. Now, it breaks the seed dormancy. The cotyledons help in breaking seed dormancy, which is actually inducing germination. Thus, when the seeds are in dormant conditions, the cytokinins are sprayed over it so that it starts germinating again. Okay. Next comes the delaying of leaf senescence. Like all of those two, cytokinins also help in delaying the leaf senescence, that is the aging of the leaves. Next, we are dealing with ethylene. Now, there is a very interesting and a stark thing about ethylene is that ethylene is the only gaseous hormone among all the other phytohormones. Okay, so this is very important. Now, what it does is that it accelerates leaf senescence. Like it helps in aging of the leaves faster, which means its function is exactly opposite of the gibberellins and the cytokinins and the auxins, right? Okay. Now, what ethylene does is that it accelerates leaf senescence. That is, it helps in making the leaves age faster, which is exactly the opposite of what auxins, gibberellins and cytokinins does. These three delays the leaf senescence, while ethylene helps in leaf senescence getting promoted faster. Okay. Next, ethylene is also used in the ripening of the fruits faster, and mainly ethylene is found in the fruits only. So ethylene, because of all its features, it is widely used in the industrial purposes too, for the growth of mango, because it promotes early flowering in mango. Okay. Next comes, it helps in inducing germination, that is by breaking the dormancy period, right? Now it also helps in the root hair growth and the growth of tubers on the potatoes. Thus, it is a positive hormone. Okay, but the only drawback is that it accelerates leaf senescence. Now let us move on to the last of the phytohormones, which is the abscisic acid, or also known as ABA. Now, what abscisic acid does is that it inhibits growth by slowing down the plant metabolism. Thus, it means that abscisic acid works completely opposite of cytokinin, gibberellins and auxins. Okay, good. Now, let us move on to its functions. Now, abscisic acid induces dormancy. That is, when there is a crisis situation and the seed cannot germinate properly and might get destroyed due to the unfavorable conditions, the abscisic acid induces dormancy. That is, it protects the seedling and the cotyledons inside the seeds and stops from germinating so that it does not get destroyed due to the unfavorable conditions. Okay. Next comes that it helps in accelerating the senescence and abscission. What is abscission? Abscission is the falling down of the leaves from the plants. So abscisic acid in the case of senescence also works totally opposite to the auxins and gibberellins. Okay. Now it also helps in the closure of the stomata during stressful situations. Like if there is flaccid conditions in the plants, it immediately closes the stomata by closing the guard cells so that the plants can become turgid again and make sure that no water is lost through transpiration. Thus, it is very important in case of emergency situations when the cell turns flaccid. So, abscisic acid hormone is also sometimes known as the stress hormone of the plant. Tropic movements. अब ट्रॉपिक मूवमेंट्स क्या होता है? ट्रॉपिक मूवमेंट्स जो होता है वो है द डायरेक्शन ऑफ द रिस्पॉन्स ऑफ द प्लांट टूवर्ड्स द स्टिम्युलस, राइट? अगर कहीं पे कुछ स्टिम्युलस हो, सपोज टच या सनलाइट या वाटर, तो उसकी तरफ जब प्लांट जाता है तो वो रिस्पॉन्स को ट्रॉपिक मूवमेंट कहते हैं. ठीक है. तो व्हाट आर द टाइप ऑफ ट्रॉपिक मूवमेंट्स? देयर आर द फोटोट्रॉपिज्म, द जियोट्रॉपिज्म, द हाइड्रोट्रॉपिज्म, थिग्मोट्रॉपिज्म, chemotropism, and the special one which is heliotropism. Okay. Now first let us discuss the phototropism. Now what is phototropism? Phototropism is the movement of the parts of the plant to as a response to the stimulus, and that stimulus is light. Okay, light or sunlight. So the movement of the plant towards the sunlight is known as phototropism. Now why does this occur? This occurs due to the presence of the auxins. As we know that auxins are highly sensitive towards sunlight, it tends to deposit wherever there is maximum sunlight, and due to the presence of auxins, it promotes cell elongation, which ultimately leads to the growth or movement of that plant part, right? Now there are two parts of phototropism. Those are positively phototrophic and negatively phototrophic. Now what are positively phototrophic? Positively phototrophic means the part of the plants which move towards the light, and negatively phototrophic means the parts which move away from the light. So we can say that shoots of plants are positively phototrophic since they always grow upright, and the roots of a plant are negatively phototrophic since they go down inside the ground, which is away from the sunlight, right? Good. Next comes the geotropism. Okay. Now what happens in geotropism is that it is the response of the plant or the movement of the plant towards the Earth's gravitational force. Now this geotropism is also of two types. Those are negatively geotropic and positively geotropic. Likewise, as roots tends to move towards the force of gravity, it is positively geotropic, and since the shoot moves away from the gravity, that is in the opposite direction of the gravity, that is upwards, it is negatively geotropic. Okay. Next, there is a instrument known as clinostat, which is used to demonstrate geotropism. Okay. Now what happens in clinostat is that a plant, rather two potted plants, are fixed separately in two clinostats. One is static while the other is rotating, right? So after few hours with proper favorable conditions for the growth of the plant, we will see that the clinostat which is not rotating, the plant on that tends to bend upwards. Okay. Now why does that happen? That happens because of the force of gravity. Now force of gravity means the shoot is negatively geotropic. That means it will always go away from the gravity. So here we can see the effect of the gravity on the plant, which leads to the upgrowth of the shoot. Whereas in the rotating one, we see that the plant grows upright. Why? Because obviously the force of gravity is experienced equally in all parts of the plant since it is rotating. That is why there is no change in the shape on the plant, or there is no bend in the shoot. So we can easily demonstrate geotropism by a clinostat. Now this can come in your board exam paper as your experiment. They can ask for the conclusion or the result or what principle is used in this experiment, right? Okay. Next, we will discuss about the hydrotropism. Now, what is hydrotropism? Hydrotropism is the response of the plant towards the moisture. So here also there is a positively hydrotropic and negatively hydrotropic. Now we know that roots absorb most of the water from the ground. So root is positively hydrotropic, while shoot does not absorb water directly from the soil. That means, or shoot does not absorb water directly. It always takes up water from the roots through the xylem. So since roots doesn't absorb water or doesn't tends to go towards the water, the root is negatively hydrotropic. Okay. Now, after these tropism and hydrotropism, let us see an experiment. Okay. In this experiment, two clamps are taken where 3 beans are attached to each of them. Okay. And moist sawdust is drizzled over that platform so that it can hold that moisture. Okay. Now after few hours or few days, what we will see is that all of these seeds starts to germinate, right? Obviously because of the favorable condition they will do germinate. What happens is that the shoot of the upper part of the plant, that is the shoot, tends to grow upwards, while the radicle, which is the part of the root, tends to move downwards, which is naturally occurring due to the force of gravity or the geotropism, where the commune is negatively geotropic, and the radicle, which will later from the root, is positively geotropic. But after few more days, what we will see is that the shoots will continue to grow upwards due to the negative geotropism. But for the roots, they will curl up and tend to grow back towards where the moist sawdust is kept. What does that mean? That means the root is breaking the force of gravity and moving towards the need of moisture which is stored in the sawdust. So it means that for the roots, water is more important than the force of gravity. That is, the hydrotropism is in the topmost priority for the roots than the geotropism. It's very clear to you now? Very. Now, next comes the chemotropism. Now, what is chemotropism? Chemotropism is the response of the plant towards the released chemicals. For example, like you have already learned about the movement of the pollen tubes towards the sugars and the peptones present outside through the female canal, right? So it means that like here, sugar and peptones are the chemicals here. So the pollen tube acts positively chemotropic. Okay. Now there are a few more examples of chemotropism. I will attach it with the notes. Okay. Now another interesting tropic movement which is very special, which is known as the heliotropism. And heliotropism is only shown by the sunflowers. Now what happens is that the sunflower tends to move its face towards the sunlight. That is, whenever the sun rises in the east, the sunflower tends to face the east. And whenever the sun tends to set in the west, the sunflower tends to move their face towards the west. Now, why does that happen? Now, this happens due to the presence of auxins on their area. Now, auxins we have already learned is highly sunlight sensitive, and wherever the sunlight is there, the auxin will tend to deposit in that region. That is why there is the movement of the face of the sunflower along with the movement of the sunlight, and this is known as heliotropism. Okay. So with this, we end all the tropic movements of the plants and also chemical coordination chapter. I know this chapter is short, but this chapter is very important. You just cannot miss any of the points, right? सब कुछ पढ़ के जाना है इस चैप्टर से. मैंने जो भी पढ़ाया है और जो भी मैं नोट्स में दूंगी सब कुछ पढ़ के जाना है, ठीक है? This is a very short chapter, but a very critical one. Not critical, I would say. It is carrying a lot of information, right? So you need to completely remember. So you need to completely understand this topic. Okay. So with this, we end this chapter here. I hope you have understood the concept of the chemical coordination and all the movement of the plants and all the hormones. And also, with this chapter, we end the plant physiology part, right? I hope you are reading all the chapters and all the notes I have given you. And thank you for coming.